Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalatu wassalamu ala asrofil anbiya'i wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Amma ba'd. For the first, let's give thanks to Allah who has given us health, mercy, and blessing. Secondly, salawat and salam always given to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has given us from the darkness to the lightness. We are from third group. In this opportunity, we would like to present about our proposal. The title is Improving Student Reading Comprehension on Narrative Text using narrative video among the 11th grade at SMA Negeri 1 Punggur. Before we start our presentation, let me introduce our member group. The first is Rahmanul Huda as a moderator and first speaker. The second is Nacha Angelia as a second speaker. The third is Era Oktanovita as a third speaker. And Dini Kurnia Putri as a fourth speaker. And the fifth speaker is Muhammad Anwar Fuadi. And the last is Juliana Kurniasari as a last speaker. In the first material, I would like to present about the background in chapter 1. As we know, English become an international language in our country, Indonesia. English is foreign language as especially for students at his become a necessity to be able to master English to keep abreast of the time in this globalization era. In the current era, all activities must involve use English language. Talking about English, there are 4 main skills in English. Those are reading, listening, speaking, and writing. According to Harmer, reading is useful for language acquisition, provided that students more or less understand what they read. The more they read, the better they get it. It means when someone reads something, they see something written and have never been seen before. The more often someone read, the more knowledge one have and got easily to understand to get something. Understand something. According to another expert, Davis, reading can also be described as a mental or cognitive process which is involve reader in trying to follow and respond to the message from the reader, who has distance, space, and time. It means a reading activity contact reader and writer even though they are in different time and place. The reason for teaching reading to students is because it belongs basically with skill in English, as important as speaking, listening, and writing. In addition, reading is very closely related to English in another subject. Most of material provided by the teacher will be presented in a written form, for example, in handbooks, textbooks, print books, and other. It means that in order to understand the material, students must have the ability to see and understand the meaning of written text, which is called reading skill. Because of that, reading is very important to be taught to the student. There are several factors that make it difficult for students to understand the reading text. The factors can come from the teacher or the student themselves. When a teacher gives a reading text that is too long and uninteresting for students to read, They will easily to get bored, and they don't understand the meaning contained in the story. Besides, there were some problems that came from the teacher. Actually, the way the teacher enters to explain the material is quite clear, but most of the teachers are too fixated on the textbook to explain the material. They don't innovate in the way to explain the material, so that it's too monotone. Because of that, students feel English lessons are boring. All those factors make students have low motivation in learning English, especially in reading. To encourage the student motivation to learn, the teacher must take advantage of interesting teaching technique to get students motivated in learning. To motivate students in learning activities, teachers are required to have ability to innovate learning method. Currently, there are many learning media that can be used to convey material content to students. The first material about background in chapter 1 is enough. The next material will be presented by the next speaker. I close by saying wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nacha Angelia. Here I will explain the problem identification. Considering the background of the study above, the writer can formulate the problems as follows. First, students have difficulty understanding in reading comprehension on the narrative text. Second, students find difficulty understanding the characteristic of the text. The third, students have difficulty understanding the general structure and features of the language on the text. The fourth, students lack interest in learning reading comprehension on the narrative text. And the last, the teacher doesn't teach in detail and interesting as a media. Next, problem limitation. Based on the problem identification above, there are several problems in this research. The researcher focused on point 1, that is, the students have difficulty in reading comprehension on narrative text. Next, problem formulation. Based on the problem that have been limited, the research formulate the research problem as follows. The first, can use of narrative video improve the students' reading comprehension on narrative text in 11th grade students of SMA Negeri 1 Punggur in the academic year 2020 or 2021. Second, can the application of narrative video improve learning the students' reading comprehension on narrative text in 11th grade students of SMA Negeri 1 Punggur in academic year 2020 or 2021. Next, object and benefit of study. Benefit of study. Based on the problem formulation, this study aims to find out whether using narrative video can improve students' reading comprehension at 11 grades of SMA Negeri 1 Punggur. Next, to describe whether using narrative video can improve students' reading comprehension at the 11 grades of SMA Negeri 1 Punggur. Next, benefit of study for the researcher. This researcher is useful for research to add capabilities or to strengthen the ability of researchers to teach English with high creativity. This researcher to give the knowledge about reading comprehension to students in order to understand about narrative text in their English achievement. Next, for teachers. By implementing narrative in teaching reading, the teacher can more easily create a conducive and effective learning atmosphere. In addition, the application of this media can help teachers give a reference in their teaching so they can apply video in improving the students' reading skill. For the next researcher, this research is expect that the result of this research will help them in finding reference or research for further research in narrative video, in improving students' reading comprehension. Through this research, the next researcher will get important information related to narrative video, both the theory and practice in accordance with which will be applied by researcher. Okay, thanks for your attention. That's all my material. Thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Dini Kurnia Putri, and the first I will say thank you to Sister Era about your explanation for material in chapter 2, and I will continue the next material in chapter 2 on part B, C, D, E, and F. The first one, I will explain about narrative text. What is narrative text? Narrative text is a kind of text to retell the story the past tense. The purpose of the text is to entertain or to amuse the reader or listeners about the story. And the next is generic structure. In narrative text, there are several generic structure. The first is orientation. Orientation is the introduction of the text. And the second is complication. Complication is the main element of narrative. And the last is resolution. Resolution is the end of narrative text. This is the phase where the participants solve the problem aroused by the conflict. And the next is language feature. Language feature used in narrative text. There are 1. Focus on specific participant, and second, use of past tense, and the third, use of temporal conjunction, and the last, use of material or action processes. And the next is material on part C, video as media in teaching. The first is media. What is media? Media is the message mediator or companion from the sender to the receiver. And the next is kinds of media. Media can be classified into 3 categories. There are visual, audio, and audiovisual. The first is visual media. In visual media, there are 2 kinds of visual media. Those are unprojected and projected media. The first, unprojected media. Unprojected media is realita or thing. For example, the student observe the ecosystem, plan the diversity of living thing. And the next is model. Model is the imitation of real thing presented in 3 dimensions from a substitution of the real thing. And the next is graphic. The function of graphic are to catch the students' attention, clarify the lesson, and illustrate the vague or forgettable concept. And the next is projected media. Number 1 is transparency of OHP. This is stated as the real media because the teacher must not change the layout of the class and still able to face the students. And the next is bordered film or slide. This is a transparent film that usually has measurement of 3.5 mm and border 2x2 inches. And the next is audio media. There are 2 kinds of audio media. They are commonly used: radio, audio cassette, and audiovisual media. There are many kinds of audiovisual. There are video, presented in the form of VCD, or computer. Computer is able to show text, picture, sound, and picture, and can also be used interactively. C. The characteristic of education media. Those are fixative property, manipulative property, and distributive property. 1. Fixative property. This characteristic explains the ability of media to record, save, continue, and reconstruct an event or object. Second, manipulative property. This characteristic enables an event to be transformed so the event that needs long time can be short in order to be shown in class. For the example, the process of record of motion in sport class. And third, distributive property. This is kind of characteristic enables an object or event to be transported through space and be served together in a number of students, in which each other get the same experience. And the next, the importance of media in teaching. The importance of media can be seen from its role and function in education as explain the detailed function of media. There are 1. Give the knowledge about the learning goals, motivate the student, present the information, stimulate the discussion, lead the student activities, do the exercise and quizzes. And the next is the ways in choosing media in teaching. Proposes 3 principles of choosing media in teaching as follows: the goal of choosing media, second, the characteristic of media, and the third, alternative choice. Beside the principle above, the factors that should be taken into account in choosing media are 1. Objective, learning program, technical quality, the effectiveness, time, cost, and availability. And the next is narrative video. What is narrative video? Narrative video can be described as a certain kinds of magnetic tape used for recording moving picture and sound about past activities or even which concern the problematic experience and resolution. And the next is the benefit of using narrative video in teaching. Generally, the benefit of using narrative video in teaching is quite the same as the benefit of using other video in teaching. Video has some benefits. Those are: first, it catch the student attention easily. The second, much information for many experts. And the third, the difficult demonstration can be prepared before. And fourth, it is more efficient in using time. 5, it can present dangerous object. And 6, the volume can be adjusted. And the next is the purpose of the use of narrative video in teaching. These purposes are the same with the purpose of narrative video in teaching. The first one, for cognitive aspect. And the second one is for psychomotor aspect, and the third one is for affective aspect. And the next is student motivation. Motivation is one of the factors that support the student comprehension. Motivation leads the student to join the lesson enthusiastically. And the next is part E, rational. Based on the explanation about teaching narrative reading using narrative video means the reader use narrative video in the class to each reading that focus on narrative text. The video contributes contribution as the media to help the reader, the teacher convey the material easily. And the next is hypothesis. Based on the explanation above, the researchers believe that narrative video can be used in teaching and learning process to improve the student reading comprehension on narrative text. Okay guys, I think enough and that's all for me. And the last I say, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Erofta Novita. I'm from class D. Here I will like to explain our material in chapter 2, theoretical review about the concept of reading comprehension. I will start to explain the concept of reading. Start from definition of reading. There are many definitions of reading according to experts. The first, according to Bojovic, express that reading may be a complex, intentional intelligence, comprehending, adaptable, a movement that takes significant time and effort to create. The second, based on Peregoy and Boyle 2005, express that reading may be a set ability include making sense and inferring meaning from plain words. Moreover, according to Elizabeth S. Pang et al., expressed that reading may be a complex movement that requires both recognition and thought. Another definition, according to Rohib Andrianto Sanya, expressed that reading is one of ability within the dialect that will be must consider. And the last, according to Mary and Kruider, explained that reading is multifaceted, preparing within the complex, may be dynamic at the same time. Well, based on the definition of expert mentioned above previously, it can be concluded that reading is method looking at getting composed image and getting from them. When we studied, we use our eyes to get composed image such as letter, accentuation mark, and speech, and we use our brain to convert them into word, sentence, paragraph that communicate something to us. And I will explain to you model of reading. According to Muhammad Dafoudi, there are two model of reading. The first, top-down model. Top-down model is a processing when a reader or listener get common view from entry by in few way and retaining the picture in general. The second, bottom-up model. On the other hand, bottom-up model, the reader focus on person, word, and expression. Bottom-up model is a processing content in non-testing. Well, next I will explain the concept of reading comprehension. The first definition of reading comprehension. There are many definitions of reading comprehension according to experts. The first, according to Orly Lipka and Linda Siagel, reading comprehension is multidimensional handle, refers to content and related to multidimensional word. The second, according to Carly Haley, he suggested that reading comprehension is understanding written word, understanding the substance, and development of text. And the third, another definition according to Hudson, reading comprehension is preparing ability such as nerve literary comprehension, word-wide comprehension, and inference making. Another definition according to Gabriel expressed that reading comprehension is one of ability within the dialect that learners must be considered. And the last, according to Andre Arup, reading comprehension is a process to get the content and to get the meaning. Well, from the definition, according to expert mention, based on the definition according to expert mentioned previously, can be concluded that reading comprehension is the ability to understanding the meaning, to get the content from the reader, from the reading about text or something. Next material, I will explain to you strategy for reading comprehension. There are many strategy for reading comprehension. The first, purposeful reading. Purposeful reading in nature assets you, help you in concentration, and make you read speedier. The second, scanning, is reading repeatedly to get common view. Scanning is reading repeatedly to get a specific data. The third, skimming, reading repeatedly to get a common information. It's different from scanning. Skimming, you can read from title, subheading, in a report of abstract conclusion word that in bold, italic and underline, chapter question, chapter objective, chapter summaries. And next, press reading, and the fifth, analytical reading. You get from you completely handling on and appreciate what you are read. And the next, reading information reading. Next, note taking. There are principles to get note taking. The first, report publication, paraphrase or summaries, note with your ideas, be creative, and review your notes. And next, making vocabulary. And the last, reading together. And next material, I will explain to you level of reader. There are level of reader. The first, novice level reading. Novice level reading, the reader are able to find on novice reader. The reader are able to get a writing symbol. And the second, intermediate reader, the reader are able to get key ideas, supporting detail. And the third, advanced reader, the reader are able to get ideas, supporting detail in abstract and factual object. And the last, superior reading, the reader are able to find key ideas or supporting detail in abstract and real or concrete object. And the last is measurement of reading. There are three measurement of reading. The first, is premonominal reading. The second, true or false question, and the last, information reading. Well, thank you so much. That's all material from me. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Yuliana Kurniasari. I will explain my material, and the title is Concept of Narrative and Concept of Reading. The first is the concept of narrative. There are some approach in teaching reading. One of them is genre-based approach. According to Hartono, the term genre is used to refer to particular text types, not to traditional varieties of literature. The point is the type of narrative text. Meanwhile, Nikki defined that there are two types of narrative text as follow. Number one is fiction. Fiction is the classification for any narrative work whose creator does not claim responsibility for the work's faithfulness to reality. There are three types of narrative text. There is one, traditional fiction, number two, modern fiction, and the last is non-fiction.
And the next is concept of reading. Bojovic expressed that reading may be a complex, intentional, intelligently comprehending, adaptable movement that takes significant time and asset to create. From the definition above, it can be summed up that reading which is used by reader in order to get. The next is concept of reading. Bojovic expressed that reading may be a complex, intentional, intelligently comprehending, adaptable movement that takes significant time and asset to create. From the definition above, it can be summed up that reading which is used by reader in order to get the purpose. I think enough. I close. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Anur Fadi. I'm as the presenter of Group 3. Thank you so much for Rahman Huda for giving the time. I will deliver the chapter 3, consider research, location or research setting, and then subject and object research, and action plan and so on. Okay, we choose senior high school in Pungur, and then for subject and object, the subject is 14 male, consider 14 male and 6 female in 11 class, 11 of class I mean. Object research, of course we have to, we want to improve the reading skill of student by using narrative text. Action plan, in this research we want to improve the program quality in all education level and to developing the teacher profession. It means that the student want to be a teacher, we have to improve the teaching program on student. In collection technique, we choose questionnaire and observation, and then documentation. This method to get valid data by using book, note, and other. After action plan have done, we need to data instrument like pre-test and post-test. In pre-test, we need, we give the multiple choice in first meeting, and then for the post-test is the result by giving the treatment in pre-test. The results show there is any improvement student reading comprehension in narrative text by using narrative video. Then observation. This purpose of observation is to get the data about student and the teacher activities signs in the learning process. And then documentation. We want to get information from senior high school 1 in Pungur. Data analysis technique. This technique has analyzed step by step to take the average of the best score. And the formula to get average is x bar mean ax per n. It means average mean total of score per total of student. To find out the student achievement after the test, we will compare between pre-test and post-test. If 70% of the student to get score 77 at least, it means that the narrative text improve the student reading comprehension. And then indicator of success. the student can be success if 70% of student can get 77 score. So this means narrative text can improve student reading comprehension. That's it. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.